Well, if you were watching Coin 6 News last night, you saw Jacqueline Abad's report on how the pandemic has changed the lives and the futures of couples all across the Pacific Northwest.
COVID-19 has certainly had a huge impact on weddings and on the industries that make those big days possible. Our digital reporter, Amanda Arden, is with us this morning. Now, Amanda, I know you worked with Jacqueline on this series, looking at all of the ways that couples have had to reschedule their weddings, make different plans. I know I saw one survey that 71% of weddings in the Pacific Northwest have been affected in all this. I mean, did this reporting surprise you, just how huge of an impact it's had?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I was surprised actually because I'm engaged myself, and so I know how difficult this process has been, and how confusing it can be for couples to commit to booking vendors and commit to going forward with a wedding when they just don't know how many people they can invite or what their wedding would look like.
Yeah, well, and I would imagine not only for the couples, but the vendors too. It's got to be hard on them because, a lot of times they're probably having to give refunds. They need to survive this as well. So what's that been like for a lot of these vendors?
Yeah, a lot of vendors have, they've been relatively flexible from what I've heard. They're rescheduling dates, they're working with their clients to reimagine what a plan B could look like. And, for it kind of depends on what the vendor does too, right? So if it's a venue, they're going to kind of have a harder time because big venue spaces can't be used as much. They're using their smaller spaces a lot more. So thankfully, that's still working for them. Cake bakeries also struggling because no one's getting the giant cakes these days. They're downsizing to something smaller or just canceling the cake altogether if they're just doing an elopement. Other businesses like coordinators or photographers, though, they told me that their business has still been going, maybe a little slower than usual, but as people go through with micro weddings and elopements, they're still deciding to keep on their coordinator and their photographer or videographer to still capture those special days, however they may look.
Yeah, you mentioned this term I have heard now in this last
Mhm.
year, micro weddings or elopements. I mean, is that what people are doing if they still want to try and have a wedding in 2020 or in 2021?
Yes, much smaller guest list is what I've been hearing a lot of. We've got a lot of regulations limiting places to 50, maybe 60 people if they're lucky. So if somebody wants a 200-person guest list, it's just not going to happen right now. I don't think either in Oregon or Washington with the guidelines that are in place. So yes, micro weddings are becoming a term. Also, elopement, what kind of used to be considered a secret wedding, is becoming a more common term for just going off and having a wedding with the couple and maybe two witnesses, and that photographer and coordinator, like I mentioned. So,
Yeah.
very popular ideas these days.
Well, when do some of these wedding vendors think couples, might be able to have somewhat normal weddings? Do they even know at this point?
I've heard a bunch of different things. Some are very optimistic for this fall. They're saying that they're getting booked a lot in October. Others think 2022 is going to be the year that we go crazy for weddings. I know a lot of people were hoping this would be the year when they could reschedule them and all their plans would work out, but more and more people are saying next year is actually going to be much more likely for all of that to happen.
Okay, now you mentioned that you are going through this whole process yourself. I know you've put together a list with some advice for from vendors for couples who are hoping to get married this year. So share with us some of what you've learned.
Yes, so they gave great advice. Some of that is coming up with, ranking your guest list into groups of 50. So that way, if you have to cut 50 people from your guest list, you can kind of cut that second priority tier of guests. Another option or a piece of advice is to come up with that plan B and be just as excited about your plan B as you are about plan A. Don't just get super hung up on plan A and then be let down when it doesn't work out. Come up with a backup plan, get excited about your backup plan, and don't be afraid to go forward with the backup plan.
Well, Amanda, it's nice to meet you virtually. The pandemic happened, I think, when you got hired, so I haven't even met you in person.
No.
So, yeah, but some good tips for sure.
Thank you. Yes, it's nice to talk to you both and to see you both too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, best of luck with your own continued planning. I know it is very stressful, but we appreciate you putting together some helpful advice for all of us out there, couples and vendors alike. So if anyone wants to check out more of the reporting here from Amanda and Jacqueline, you can check it out online at coin.com.
Thanks,
Okay, cool.
Amanda.
We're